Reticulated Python. This one holds the length record, not by a little, but by a lot. Across Southeast Asia, from Myanmar down through the islands of Indonesia, these snakes regularly hit over 20 feet, and some confirmed individuals have gone past 25. The name comes from the pattern on their skin, this intricate, almost geometric network of scales that honestly looks like someone designed it. People living near the rainforests know these snakes well. They take livestock, dogs, and there are real documented cases of them killing adult humans. No venom involved. They squeeze, and they squeeze hard. What's interesting, though, is that size alone doesn't explain why they've done so well. They show up in river systems, farm edges, city outskirts. One turned up in a sewer in Bangkok. They swim, they can climb when they're younger, and after a big meal, they can go weeks without eating again. They fit themselves into a lot of different worlds. Green Anaconda. Where the reticulated python wins on length, the anaconda wins on sheer weight. These snakes live in the Amazon and Orinoco river basins across South America, and a large female, females get much bigger than males, can push past 200 pounds. That's not a number that's easy to picture until you see one. Their whole body seems shaped for water. On land, they move slowly, almost clumsily, but underwater, they just disappear. Eyes and nostrils positioned right on top of the head, so they can lie just under the surface and wait for something to come close. Capybaras, deer, caimans, they eat all of it, and after a meal that size, they might not need to eat for months. Indigenous communities across the Amazon have been telling stories about anacondas for a very long time. In some traditions, the anaconda is the mother of the river itself. For an animal that spends most of its life hidden underwater, it carries a lot of weight in the human story too. Burmese Python. Originally from South and Southeast Asia, marshes, grasslands, forest edges, this is a snake that can reach 18 feet or more and has a body thick enough to take down deer and small crocodilians. In its native range, it's just part of the landscape. The trouble started when large numbers of them were brought into the United States for the exotic pet trade during the 80s and 90s. Some escaped, others were released. And when they reached the Florida Everglades, something went wrong in the worst possible way. The environment suited them almost perfectly. They bred, they spread, and they started eating. Studies tracking mammal populations in South Florida found the numbers had collapsed. Marsh rabbits, raccoons, opossums, gone in areas where pythons had taken hold. It's genuinely one of the more striking ecological stories of the last few decades. A snake perfectly harmless to its home ecosystem, becoming one of the most destructive invasive species on a completely different continent. African rock python. This is Africa's biggest snake, and it has a reputation that most herpetologists will tell you is well earned. It lives across sub-Saharan Africa, savannas, rocky areas, riverbanks, and can exceed 16 feet, with some larger adults recorded past 20. The thing that comes up most often when people who work with these snakes talk about them is temperament. Compared to other large pythons, the African rock python is quicker to respond, quicker to strike, and generally less tolerant of any kind of disturbance. They've been documented taking antelope, warthogs, Nile crocodiles, and, in a small number of cases, humans. The 2013 incident in Canada, where an escaped African rock python was linked to the deaths of 2 young children, got international attention and raised serious questions about keeping these animals privately. Across Africa, communities have always treated this snake with real caution. That's not tradition or exaggeration, it's just accurate. Indian python. Indian python, often confused with the Burmese python, which makes sense. They're closely related and look similar. The Indian python lives across the subcontinent from Pakistan through India and into Sri Lanka and parts of Nepal. They're generally a bit smaller than Burmese pythons, typically in the 13 to 16-foot range, though larger ones exist. Brown and tan, blotched scales, good camouflage in dry terrain. In India, they're legally protected. You cannot kill one without serious legal consequences, though habitat pressure and poaching still affect populations in places. What's different about the Indian python compared to the others on this list is how present it's been in Indian culture across recorded history. Temple carvings, ancient texts, villages where people still encounter them near farms and shrines. The relationship isn't really one of fear. It's closer to a long-standing familiarity that most people in the West probably wouldn't expect. The name alone has been doing a lot of cultural work for decades. Most people have heard it. Fewer know much about the actual animal. Boas are native to a huge range of habitat across Central and South America, from Mexico down to Argentina, and they've also settled into parts of the Caribbean. They grow between roughly 8 and 12 feet on average, which puts them on the smaller end compared to the others here. But smaller doesn't mean there's something to dismiss. They're heavy, muscular, and strong. One thing that separates them from pythons biologically is how they reproduce. Boas give birth to live young rather than laying eggs, and they adapt well. Rainforest, dry scrubland, the edge of farmland, they manage in all of it. The pet trade pushed them into every corner of the globe. In parts of Colombia and elsewhere in their native range, people actually encourage them to stick around near homes and storage areas because they keep the rat population down. Practical, quiet. Not exactly what most people imagine when they hear the name.